Ever since I was a kid, I dreamed of owning a piece of land. It's a place where I could breathe freely, away from the hustle and bustle. Last year, I finally made that dream a reality. I bought a sprawling old farm, a beautiful slice of history with rolling hills, a weathered red barn, and a sturdy farmhouse that had stood for over 100 years. It was perfect. Standing on my porch, looking out over the fields I now called my own, I felt a sense of pride and peace I'd never known. This was my sanctuary, my little kingdom, marked clearly with a private property sign at the entrance. I thought I had found my forever home, a place to build a legacy. I couldn't have been more wrong. The trouble started about a month after I moved in. One sunny afternoon, a shiny sedan pulled up to my gate. A woman with a clipboard and a very determined look on her face got out and marched right up to the entrance. She introduced herself as Brenda, the president of the local homeowners association. I was a bit confused. I knew there was an HOA for the new Meadowbrook subdivision a few miles down the road, but my farm was old, established long before any of that was built. I politely explained that my property wasn't part of her association. She just smiled, a thin, unpleasant smile, and handed me a stack of papers. They were official-looking documents, demands for payment stamped in big red letters across the top. According to her, I owed thousands in back dues and was in violation of a dozen different rules I'd never even heard of. I tried to reason with her, showing her my property lines on a map, but she wouldn't listen. She said, "Pay up, or we'll start eviction proceedings. This whole area is under our jurisdiction." I was stunned. Eviction? From my own land, that was the moment I knew this wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a fight for my home. The letters kept coming, each one more aggressive than the last. They were filled with legal jargon, threatening liens on my property, fines for uncut grass, and even the color of my barn. It was absurd. I knew in my gut they were wrong, but proving it was another story. I spent my days in the dusty county records office, poring over ancient deeds and property maps that were brittle with age. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I traced property lines with my finger, going back decades, even centuries. I was looking for the one piece of evidence, the smoking gun that would prove my farm was never, ever part of their planned community. Meanwhile, the pressure from the HOA was escalating. They weren't just sending letters anymore. They were getting personal. One evening, I looked out my window and saw the entire HOA board gathered at the edge of my property line. There was Brenda, pointing dramatically at my barn, with 3 or 4 of her cronies nodding in agreement. They were gesturing, talking loudly, treating my home like it was some sort of public nuisance they had the right to judge. It felt like a siege. I was a private citizen on my own land, and I was being harassed. That was the last straw. The next day, I went to the hardware store and bought a dozen no trespassing signs. I hammered them into posts all along my property line, a clear message for them to stay away. I also installed a full security camera system covering every angle of my property. If they were going to make a move, I wanted it on record. I was no longer just defending my property. I was preparing for a full-blown legal battle. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in property law. After reviewing my research and the HOA's demands, he agreed to take my case. He said it was one of the most audacious overreaches of power he'd ever seen. The stage was set for a showdown. The HOA, led by Brenda, officially filed a lawsuit to force a lien on my farm and compel me to join their association. They were actually trying to take my home. We ended up in a formal mediation hearing, which felt as tense as any courtroom. The room was sterile and cold. On one side sat Brenda and the HOA's lawyer, looking smug and confident. On the other side, it was just me and my attorney. They presented their case first, showing a modern map of their development where they had conveniently drawn a line that included my farm. They talked about community standards and property values, painting me as some stubborn recluse who refused to play by the rules. Brenda even had the nerve to say I was dragging down the neighborhood's aesthetic. My blood was boiling, but my lawyer just gave me a calm, reassuring look. Then it was our turn. My lawyer stood up and began, but he let me do the real talking. I wasn't just a defendant. I was a landowner defending his legacy. I walked to the front of the room and unrolled a massive city-certified map from the county surveyor dated 1923. It was a beautiful, hand-drawn document. With a steady hand, I pointed to the original plot of my farm. Its boundaries clearly defined, established nearly a century before their HOA was even a thought. I then presented the original deed, signed and sealed, which made no mention of any covenants or homeowners associations. My farm was legally and historically separate. I showed them the town's zoning records, which classified my land as agricultural, completely distinct from the residential zoning of their subdivision. Piece by piece, I dismantled their entire case. The mediator looked at my evidence, then at their flimsy map. He asked the HOA's lawyer if they had any documentation that predated mine. Of course they didn't. You could see the color drain from Brenda's face. Her confident smirk vanished, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated shock. She looked at her lawyer, who just shook his head slightly. They had nothing. They were caught. They had based their entire campaign of harassment on a lie, and I had just exposed it with undeniable truth. The mediator declared their claim baseless. I had won. Walking out of that building was one of the best feelings of my life. The weight of the world was off my shoulders. When I got back to the farm, the air felt different. It was lighter. The sun seemed to shine brighter. I stood on my porch, just like I did on that first day. But this time, the feeling of peace was 10 times stronger, because I had fought for it. I had defended my home and my rights against a bully who thought she could intimidate her way into controlling my life. A few days later, I saw a moving truck outside Brenda's house in the subdivision. Apparently, the fallout from the failed lawsuit was enough to oust her as president. I can't say I felt sorry for her. Now, life on the farm is exactly as I dreamed it would be. It's quiet, it's peaceful, and, most importantly, it's mine. Every sunset I watch from my porch is a reminder of the battle I won. It's a reminder that you should never let anyone bully you or try to take what's rightfully yours. Sometimes you have to stand up and fight back, not just for your property, but for your peace of mind. Let me tell you, that victory makes the sunset feel so much sweeter. Thank you for watching my story. If you've ever had a run-in with an overbearing HOA, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Karen Conflict for more stories.